Hi, and welcome to the Art of Learning. Now that the board exam season is coming to a close, we have a lot to break down. From many different controversies regarding the difficulty of papers to students and teachers arguing with each other upon how these papers should have been, there's a lot that has happened in this past 1 month. So, today, let us break all of that down and understand truly what's happening, what you can look forward to in the upcoming year as students and as educators. So make sure to like, subscribe, follow, add this to wherever you're listening to or watching this, and let's get going. So to start this entire piece, I was contacted by one of my students who was complaining about the difficulty of the grade 12 physics exam. In all honesty, the exam was interesting from an educator's perspective as well as from students' perspective, because a lot of the typical things that usually show up in this kind of an exam did not really show up. So what happened? Was that physics paper really difficult? Rather, I should say it was unexpected, because the focus shifted from more direct questions to higher order thinking skills. You had long answer questions which required a higher conceptual understanding and required one to be able to think and act quickly. Moreover, there are a lot of topics that were glossed over, whereas some other topics that historically did not get as much weightage, they got more priority. What does that really indicate? Two things. Firstly, that the board exams are bound to change. And there's a lot more that's going to happen in this upcoming year that I will touch upon a little later on. That's one thing. The second is that students cannot really predict anymore as to how these exams are going to go. As simple as that. They're shifting things up, they're changing things up. So, what should be the target for students when they sit and study through all of that? What should be the target for these students to become learners? And see, this phrasing is very important. How should these students target to become learners so that these exams do not become a hassle for them? That's important to know as well. So, I have not yet gotten all of the grade 12 papers, but I definitely have gotten all the grade 10 papers, and there's a lot of interesting insights that we've had from those papers as well. So, if I were to break down all of them for you, as well as give you an idea of what other sources are telling us, the mathematics paper for grade 12 was slightly towards a tougher side this time. And what made it that tough, quote unquote? There was less focus on extremely direct questions, rather, there were more conceptual understanding required. Even though one source says that the questions were taken from NCERT itself, there were a lot of other sources that claimed that the papers were much more analytical, that required a lot of thinking. So what did the students really mess up? It was majorly time management. They could figure out, in theory, what they need to do. However, in the time slot they were given, they could not really put it down on paper. And that is where they majorly struggled. Comparatively, science was not as difficult. Science, you had apparently one or two sources saying that chemistry was the harder section. Some say that physics was a bit more tricky. All agree that biology was comparatively easier because the diagram-based questions were of help. But what you do find very interesting is that you had a lot of diagram-based questions, there are a lot of conceptual questions. Chemistry was still more on theory, so it required a lot of your recall ability. But overall, the science exam was also pretty hands-on application based. English had its reading sections a little more time consuming. Overall, the paper was claimed to be balanced by all of my sources. Moreover, grammar-based questions tested their ability to recall, of course. There were a lot of questions that required a higher understanding of the grammar that is being taught to them. Moreover, the writing skills was what took most of their time. Writing and managing time writing things down was of the highest importance for this paper. Social science was interesting because history was overall found to be extremely difficult because of the question's reliance on the students remembering accurate historical dates. Now, I personally find that difficult, so keeping my personal bias aside, history required a lot of that accurate information that had to be put forth in the paper. Geography was much easier, of course, because there are a lot of more map-based questions, a lot more case-based questions, and that was something students really fared well in. The history map-based questions was also interesting because the topics chosen this time were not too difficult. Economics, political science were moderate, somewhat easy according to some sources, but the paper overall was balanced. And Hindi was interesting as well because the questions were pretty straightforward. What really made it a little lengthy, or rather I prefer saying long, was the amount of writing skills that were present. They had to write some stuff, they had to make sure it was perfect. So see the particular keywords that I highlighted over here. I used the word application based. I used the words hands-on. I used the words higher order thinking skills. All of these you will find in the CBSE's preface and for a lot of different textbooks. Moreover, you will find them in a lot of their material that they send out into the public domain. But why are these terms important? Why is CBSE really focusing on these particular terms? That is pretty much because they're trying to align with the National Education Policy 2020, the NEP. And you will see some signs that are upcoming around all of this that's happening. From 2026 onwards, or rather in this upcoming academic year, the CBSE proposes to split the grade 10 board exams into two. How does that work? I had just had a look into the proposal that they put up, and there are a lot of interesting highlights from there. Mainly the grade 10 exams will occur once in March and once in May. Moreover, how are these exams going to be scheduled? You have all of the subjects grouped in an interesting manner. Science, math, social science, English, Hindi. These are subjects that are going to be independent. They are in their own groups. All of your regional and foreign languages come under one group, and the rest of the subjects that remain will be in its own group. So, apart from that others group that I just mentioned, science, math, social science, English, Hindi, and your regional and foreign languages, will be conducted on fixed dates. So for your science, math, English, social science, and Hindi, that's pretty normal. But for regional and foreign languages, they will all occur on one day in one go. That's a new change. Moreover, for the others exams, what's going to change? You're going to have these exams happen in 2 to 3 phases. There will be 2 to 3 days that will be kept, and students will be allotted days depending upon their subject choice that they make in September when they sign the LOC. When they choose their subjects at that time, they cannot change it beyond that, but that allows the CBSE to align these exams in a particular manner so that they're avoiding mismanagement as a whole. So students, depending upon how they have chosen their subjects, are going to be allotted particular days where they're going to be attempting their exams. To avoid leakage of papers, the CBSE plans to collect the question papers from students for these other exams after they are done, so that potentially if there's another student giving the same exam on a different day, they don't have the paper leaked to them. Personally, I find this not the best, but again, we need to see how this will be implemented. This is still in its proposal stages. There's a lot more that can happen. Moreover, a satisfactory result from any of these exams is sufficient for you to be able to take admission into your 11th grade. This is extremely important. If you're satisfied with your first exam result, you can, in theory, skip exam 2 and apply to your higher education for 11th and 12th grade using the results of your exam 1. You will not get a mark sheet immediately after first exam. You will get it in your DigiLocker, but you can use those results. Either in exam 1 and exam 2, depending on what you use as your result, can be considered as a supplementary exam. If you were to fail an exam, you'll put under an improvement section. You'll be allowed to give an exam once again. The details of it were not as clear in the proposal to me as they should have been, but I suppose that is undergoing some revision as we speak, and we might get newer details as time passes. However, the crux of the matter is that we are going into this system that allows these learners to really look at themselves, assess how they are performing, and get better chances at giving these exams. So instead of having an end all like one go exam, having another shot at this makes it much better for these 15-year-olds particularly to be able to gauge how they're going about things and prepare better. However, for grade 12, this does not apply. Grade 12 will still have one board exam at the end of the year to align with all of the competitive exams that exist for them. So overall, is this outcry over exams really that problematic? No. What you're seeing here is a sign of change, and a positive one at that. There's a lot more work to be done, to be very honest, because a lot of our system needs a total revamp. But these small steps in the right direction can help a lot. So how do you, as an educator, help your students become learners to be able to adjust to all of this? Firstly and the most foremost thing you need to do is get yourself accustomed to everything that is happening now. All the changes that's happening now, you need to get yourself accustomed. Most of the teachers were not aware, or rather they did not make their students aware of the fact that the CBSE in November or October of the previous year had already mentioned that the board exams this year will be very much reasoning based. That information was in the public domain. I had also gotten access to it, and yet not a lot of students were aware. Moreover, if the students were also aware, there were a lot of them who could not prepare in the correct manner. Your job as an educator is to make sure that this information translates to an actionable plan. That needs to be the change that we need to do in the ground up. Policymakers do one job, that is to change the system from above. Educators do one job, that is to change the system from the ground up. Unless and until both things do not happen, there is no change that can be expected. Thus, the most important thing for you and I is to make sure that we do things correctly for the good of our learners. With this, I will wrap up today's episode. I'm keeping it a short one, but what I wanted to highlight is simply this. Change is imminent. You cannot avoid it. Rather, embrace it and ride that wave to success. With this, thank you and happy learning.